I think that people in Afghanistan, as we're hearing from families, friends, and communities, people feel besieged by a terror group as their government. People are absolutely terrified for their lives.
The speed with which this has happened has been described as astonishing and shocking. What have you made of how quickly the Taliban have swept major cities, including now Kabul today?
It has been shocking for everybody. I mean, there were reports that Kabul would fall in 60 to 90 days, but it fell actually in less than 24 hours. So it is actually shocking. It's really hard for the public outside Afghanistan to take, but also importantly for the population inside Afghanistan. Where they feel absolutely besieged and surrounded by the Taliban. I think that the whole question of the Taliban takeover was always an existential question for Afghanistan and its people, but also people who had fled Afghanistan from their previous rule. It was an existential question, but there was always this equilibrium between peace and instability. And in that kind of equilibrium, in that environment, there was some hope that stability might come sometime in the future, but nobody really imagined the takeover, the manner, the speed, and the scale of it like it happened last night.
You must see stability as impossible now.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people are feeling like this is the darkest day in the history of Afghanistan. People feel absolutely betrayed, helpless, disappointed and angry. I think that at this time, people are more worried about the humanitarian side of it, because it seems to be a very politically complex situation that's happening in Afghanistan. And the Taliban's atrocities have not been forgotten from their previous ruling, let alone people actually feeling like they have recovered from the traumas that were inflicted on them. People who had been subject to mass massacres, especially the minority groups that were massacred. And actually, coincidentally, on 8th of August, it was the 23rd anniversary of the Mazar-e-Sharif massacres of Hazaras, where actually over 7,500 people actually got massacred ruthlessly and indiscriminately. And in that kind of anniversary, on 23rd, we see that Taliban emerge, and it's really in recent people's memories. And I think particularly for minority groups, as well as women, half of the population of Afghanistan, what is going to happen to them? What will be the aftermath of a Taliban terror group governing people's lives? It's a very terrifying future that awaits people. That's the perception of people inside and outside Afghanistan.
Shukufa, you mentioned there about people feeling betrayed and angry. Is that towards the, now seemingly ousted Afghani government, or is that to Western forces who have left? Who is that aimed at?
Angry towards everybody, the government, the international forces, the international community, the NATO forces, everybody that had a role to play in Afghanistan. So many promises were made to instill democracy, to instill peace and stability. People were given a glimpse of peace and hope, and they were suddenly robbed of it. There were people say that they are being fed to the wolves. That's the level of betrayal. People feel like 20 years of promises were just a lie, and the sense of betrayal that comes from that is absolutely multifaceted. And I think that there hasn't been enough time for people to even comprehend the consequences of this takeover.
Well, we're hearing,
especially from Australian government had been directly involved in sort of the intervention in Afghanistan, both in combat forces but also in rebuilding of Afghanistan and peace and development. And people had expectations, at least from the international community, to maintain the gains that were made in 20 years. A lot of blood and sweat were spent actually gaining those, perhaps minimal civil liberties. But now all of that is gone. If people feel like this is year zero, really, we have gone so backwards, at least by 200 years, if Taliban has to stay.